So another industry we really gotta try to fix. Uh, we talked about moral capitalism versus immoral corporatism, but it's the drug industry, man. Whew, we are just these guys are at our throats. They got us by the cojones, man. They are gutting us, and not to diminish the amazing amount of miracles, right? The world is super healthy compared to what it was. Antibiotics, Lister and Pasteur did more for the world than maybe anybody. And those two guys, if you don't know who they are, Louis Pasteur and I forget, Alfred Lister, whatever his name was. Pasteur figured out antibiotics, which, I mean, people used to get a cut. Like, people don't appreciate this stuff. You used to just, like, scrape your leg on a rock and die from the infection. That's before antibiotics, man. You get a little chest cold, it move into your lungs, move into your body, kill you, pneumonia. And antibiotics, maybe the most amazing invention. But Lister, too, was all about antiseptics. Back in the day, there's stories of, like, people cutting into cadavers, and then they would go to, like, do a birth, maybe even a C-section, and then go back to cutting cadavers without cleaning anything, cleaning their hands. They had no idea about bacteria. And antiseptics, amazing. Those two things, that's the reason there's 7-8 billion people, whatever it is now. Really, those two guys, man, Pasteur and Lister, more than anybody probably. But the drug companies have gotten out of control, right? There was that guy charging insane amounts for, like, insulin, basic needs stuff. This is all for profit, right? There was recently an article about one of the CEOs asking, is curing a profitable model for businesses? It's crazy. It's a business now, right? And I've always thought doctors and warriors have the most sacred jobs in a weird way because of this. They're the only two jobs that are basically trying to make themselves obsolete, like good ones, right? A true warrior always wants peace in the end, so he's obsolete. He basically is putting himself out of a job. And a good doctor, the same thing. They want to heal wounds and make themselves obsolete. And so I think those are, in their own strange way, two very noble and special jobs, let's call them, in the world. Very unique in that, right? And they're really kind of like the only two that are like that, right? That are, their greatest act is to make themselves obsolete. The drug companies are screwing us right now, and I don't see it getting better. Insurance companies, I've heard, if you listen to the Nixon tapes, there's actually a part where Kaiser, like Kaiser Permanente were the first people, they literally said it was a gimmick. When he gets brought up to Nixon, it's in the tapes, and he's like, oh yeah, we're going to do these insurance companies. Kaiser wants to do these insurance companies where everybody pays in and then they'll pay the medical expenses. And Nixon's like, oh, I don't like that. And then he's like, no, you don't understand. They're going to take as much money as they can and give a little bit of treatment as they can, right? The cheapest treatment they can. He's like, oh, that's great. Whatever. And I think even from their founding, they were corrupt, right? Business models. But the drug companies now, too, in unison with them, are terrible. My grandma was a pharmacist. They ate her alive. They used to they would pay her less than the drugs were worth. Right, so Rite Aid, CVS, whatever, can buy a ton of drugs. Walmart can buy a ton, and so they pay 50 cents a pill or something, right? Much less in some cases, depending on the pills, right? And it could be $50 a pill, depends what it is. But so they would pay her what they would pay Walmart, and so for her, she'd buy one bottle for one customer. And sometimes she would pay $30 for the bottle. They'd pay her $28, insurance companies. So she was literally losing money to heal people. And she was a healer. My grandma was about vitamins, herbs. Like, she was like a wise woman, right? The old wise women that were just healers. She was all about healing. She was getting women to have kids before all these, like, in vitro or whatever it's called. She was amazing with vitamin E and vitamins and getting people healthy first, and then they would have. She had a whole list. You call them the vitamin E babies, of people would come and bring in their kids. They had to end up having like 6 kids or 8 kids or something crazy, and amazing woman. And so they would not only not pay her for the drug, but her time. Right? She's a pharmacist. She's a skilled worker. So they should be paying her like $100 so that her time that she takes to call the doctors, fill the script or whatever. She didn't have assistants or whatever. She did all herself. They wouldn't even pay her that. They'd pay her like $20 on a $30 jar of pills or whatever it was. And she couldn't believe it. At the end, she was like, man, they took away my livelihood. And so insurance companies, the drug companies, super corrupt. We need them. I mean, you know, there's some things they have to make. Pharmacists used to be able to do suspensions, all different kinds of things, you know, but they've slowly gotten away from that. The drug manufacturers want to do it all themselves. But I think the easiest way, and you know, so many of the things, they're all derived from plants mostly, right? They're all plants one way. And so I think the only way we're ever going to bring the drug companies back down to a reasonable level, I don't want to say bring them to their knees, because we do need them and they're important. But in a moral society, they should be already doing this. But I think the simplest solution for this is we need a really accessible book of herbs. There's lots of books on herbal remedies, and we need way more research done on every herb, which they don't want to do, right? Release. They do a lot of herbal research. I don't think they're releasing it to the public because they derive most of these drugs from plants, right? They're all just from plants. And so, but there are those in existence, right? But we need like the dummies guide, herbal medicine for dummies. And then we need a store that sells the plants. So like a Home Depot kind of greenhouse just sells medicinal plants, from aloe vera to willow bark, right? And you can plant these in your yard. I mean, to some degree, so like in Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine, they believe certain herbs, you have to find them where they grow to get the optimal medicinal value. If it grows on the Yellow River, you have to harvest it from the Yellow River. It grows in this set of mountains, you got to harvest it from this set of mountains because the soil is specific to those. But I think with enough research, we can figure out the soil specificity, right? And we know this with grapes also, right? The reason Napa and Sonoma are so successful is because of their soil, right? And same with hot peppers, right? They found places, Australia, Carolinas, different places where peppers can grow and get the hottest, right? The most capsaicin. So we know this is true, that certain soils benefit certain plants in certain ways. But we can, just the way they figured out places to grow the hottest peppers is the same way that we can figure out where certain herbs grow optimally. Maybe we even, you know, either harvest them and sell them dried in this big place, or we give a little bit of soil from that place. And though we'll lose some potency if you put them in your backyard, but you know, I grew ghost chilies and they were probably, instead of 1.2 million Scoville, they were, you know, 900,000, because they diminish, they lose something, right? They're not in India, so they're gonna not be quite as hot, but they're still hot. It was still enough to scorch me, man. I can habaneros like candy. Those ghost chilies were working me. And so, you know, it's whether it's diminished a little or we figure out a way of where to grow them optimally, that's really what we need. We need to have a very simple guide to herbal medicine, and like a dummies guide that anybody can have, and train our doctors in herbal medicine, and then have a store where we can sell herbal medicine, like different herbs and teas. Chinese do it with just tea. I went to China with my grandma actually when she was sick, and went to this like world class. He was one of the first guys to actually be an herbalist and an acupressurist. They were normally separate in China, I guess. And his like grandpa on one side was an herbalist, and his grandpa on the other side was a acupuncturist. So he learned both, and he was one of the first guys to combine them. And it was amazing. He like felt my wrist. He did my aunt first, and I'm like, I hadn't seen my aunt in years. She lives out in Hong Kong, and I hadn't really seen her for so long, so I didn't know when he was talking about her eating habits and sleeping habits. I'm like, all right, cool. But I knew my grandma really well. I would help her in the pharmacy all the time. I was super close with her. She was more like my mom than my mom is. And when he felt her pulse and was telling her all about how she sleeps and eats and this and that, I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. It was so accurate. And then, so I wasn't planning to do anything because it's kind of expensive or whatever. I was just there to carry luggage and help her out. And my grandpa couldn't go. But they were like, oh, you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And so he told me all this crazy stuff. And then he gave me just ground up herbs. He chose what herbs I needed, ground them up. I would drink them in tea 3 times a day. Make like a hot tea, put a couple spoons in or whatever, mix it up. Never felt better in my life. Like, it was crazy how good I felt. And so, it works. Like, we've gotten away from that model here, but a good doctor should know all the different herbs and be able to prescribe them. And then the basic stuff, headache medicine like willow bark instead of Tylenol, make teas, that kind of stuff, and have it much more accessible. I mean, doctors definitely need to prescribe what's right for us and shouldn't make it too crazy where people are poisoning themselves and not knowing what to do. Because, medicine is definitely a skilled art. Highly skilled art, but at the same time they should be more accessible to us, and that's the kind of pharmacies with an F, right? That's really what we need. It's more pharmacies with an F. And so I think that would kind of release the stranglehold that these drug companies have on us, because right now they're just hammering people like, man, basic necessities, insulin, and it's miracles. I mean, we're doing things for people that we couldn't imagine even 100 years ago, let alone 500 years ago. It blows people's minds. Like, the modern medicine's amazing. I don't want to take away from the miracles that we're doing, because they're like miracles. At the same time, though, we need to give something back to the people, put some power back into people's hands, and I think there'd be less side effects, honestly. I think plants much better when they're in their natural environment, natural potency. I've always said this with herb. I'm not big on dabs. I think cannabis is great. It's a tree of life. CBD, phenomenal. There's so many cannabinoids that are amazing. CBG actually is shown to cure melanoma. There's amazing applications for the plant. When we start to concentrate things, or even the coca plant, right? You can chew coca leaves to acclimate. When the Spaniards were in Peru, they didn't understand how these Incas were working all day at altitude. They were passing out on their horses, but they would chew coca leaves the whole day. And even it's a common greeting. The all fur bag, and you take a leaf, and they offer you their bag. You take a leaf, you chew on them. But in all that they chewed in a day, it's like way less than a line of cocaine, right? And so people, when we start concentrating things, it becomes dangerous, right? That's where, so I've always stayed away from like dabs and hash, and I've tried it, but I'm not a fan. I think what the plant can naturally, till it plateaus, what it can naturally handle is the proper dosage. I think Mother Nature gives us the proper dosage on things like that. And I'm a firm believer in just sticking with plants. Ironically, my grandma was a pharmacist, stepdad's a pharmacist, but I am very hesitant in pharmaceuticals. I take them as a complete last resort. I had a couple teeth pulled, and I didn't take any drugs. They were like trying to get me to take heavy drugs. I'm like, nah, dude. I took some Tylenol and some Motrin or something. I don't know what it was. That was the alternatives. That was it in one day. Just the first day for the swelling. Second day maybe a little bit for the Motrin. But that's it, And so I don't trust pharmaceutical companies very much, and I think plants are the way to go. Big warehouse, pharmacies with an F. They'll help with so many of like the little things and the things people need every day, and they know what they need, and they can go and just pick them up, get away from all the pills and be able to grow. Then we know what we need to grow, right? So if someone is really poor, they can just start growing what they need, and they're good to go. And then they don't have a stranglehold on us the way they do. So know if it's the best idea, but I think it's a move in the right direction than where we're going right now, and how the drug companies and pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies are just screwing us. And really, really hitting us hard, and taking from the doctors too. The doctors aren't huge fans. They get kickback from the drug companies, but the insurance companies are destroying doctors, dermatologists, doctors, dentists. I mean, dentists don't get covered now, which is insane. Like, who doesn't need their teeth? Or like optometrists, who could be blind and not see. It's like so hard to get coverage for some of that stuff, but and like survive with bad vision. But the insurance companies have already deemed it non-essential. So hopefully we can get away. I wish everyone the blessing of like finding their cures in the earth, and pharmacies with an F, and being healthy and happy, and that their families can be healthy and happy too. Let's do this, people. Save the humans. If you got any better ideas too, throw them out there, man. Any other suggestions? I'd love to hear other people's suggestions. And so, save the humans.
Health is wealth, vital is vital. You can't rely on nobody else. Tracking with the herb at the field for the healing of the nation. Fruit and vegetable for medication. So much food, so much variation. Sustenance for all generation. It's there in abundance. Vitamins and minerals and whole heap of nutrients. Anti-inflammatory and antioxidants. Give your temple a chance, 'cause health is wealth.